you are doing well and in good spirit during the lockdown and the pandemic of COVID. So I had a word with Remy, and he said the topic of today's discussion is the new education in the new reality after COVID-19 pandemic. Since I've been working in the space of higher education for the last so many years, so he wanted me to talk on higher education. So welcome all of you to the new normal world of uncertainty. So all of us have been noticing that among many economic sectors, the higher education sector is undergoing a tectonic shift in higher education right now. What several futurists and educational technologists had been forecasting for long now is happening right away. And the entire courtesy goes to COVID-19. Now, post this crisis, I was just trying to be thoughtful as to where exactly the entire higher education is moving towards. It's very much clear that we will have to have a well-rounded and effective educational practice. The reason being, our focus is absolutely capacity building of the young minds of the future generation. We also are having this responsibility of developing the skill sets, have employability, productivity, health, and well-being in the decades to come. Now, one thing is very evident, that the higher education sector has a choice, which has thrown at us. Either we revert to old ways or use this as a watershed moment to transformative change in higher education. We could look forward to reconstruction, not return. Now, moving on from this new landscape, this gives rise to a new education perspective in the new reality tomorrow. I think at the outset, we all understand that we are going to cater to a different generational mindset in the future. So the future learners are going to be purely generations Z, Alpha, and beyond. Now, we cannot any longer be dependent on the old system of the education models. There is a need to develop new education models with the usage of agile innovation. So it has got to be a combination of agility and innovation bringing it together so that we can create some new education models. Now, when I say a new education model, how exactly this model would look like? As all of us know that since the pandemic has hit the entire globe, most of the universities, I should say millions of students, are stuck to their homes on the couch, and they are accessing classes through the digital platform and using the digital pedagogy. Now, in this kind of an arena, this entire system is going to have an impact at us even in the future. So I think educational institutions should start having a rethought about making investments in the learning design resources. There are a number of experts in industry who have not been made use of. For instance, instructional designers and campus learning organizations. It is time in the future that we will have to entirely augment this process of having instructional design mechanism in the institution so that the entire process can be centralized for some time and then make the facilitators independent in their approach. And moving on to this new reality, the fourth point that came to my mind was about unlocking technology to deliver education. So the chalk and talk mechanism, I don't think would work for a very long time. So now, with this blended education system, what kind of technology can be integrated in the future educational institutions? A number of times we think about the challenges and the issues that are going to hit us when we talk about accepting anything new. So that's the reason I thought, let me not talk just about the challenges and only the problems. I thought, why not be solution oriented, start fixing the problems. Definitely every system has gap. So how do we bridge this gap? How do we have continuity in the learning process? And there comes a few tips in the space of technology, which is going to really make a big difference in the space of learning forever. Industry 4.0 is going to have a major contribution. Emerging technologies such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, process augmentation, AR, VR are all going to transform how exactly the ecosystem of higher educations have been functioning now and later. Basically, they would help in reducing the levels of institutional administration, the hierarchy, cutting down on costs, improving resiliency. And the major takeaway would be to fight education credential frauds, which is a major concern in the space of techno education platform. There can also be customized learning plans and methods which can be used with the help of integration of Industry 4.0 into Education 4.0. All through the years, we've just been talking about customers in all the sectors, their experiences being measured. But there will be a time where from the enrollment to the support of and becoming an alumni of an educational institution, there will be a need to map the experiences of the students. Students are going to pay their tuition fee, not for the infrastructure, not for your e-resources, but they are going to pay your tuition fee for the experiences that they are going to carry. And there comes the usage of either an experience API or a cloud-based solution and the Internet of Things, which will help universities, institutions in the entire space of education to map the student experiences. And the other important point that came to my mind while I was thinking about this topic was adaptive learning. Being in India, I face this challenge on a day-to-day basis. I have a number of students who come from different intellectual capacity. And every classroom is not a homogeneous classroom, but an absolutely heterogeneous class, with children from different levels of learning ability. Now, all through the years, we have just been doing mass education, not considering, I'm not just focusing on the Ivy League institutions, nor I'm just talking about the tier 1 and the tier 2 institutions. My entire focus most of the time is on these institutions which are not in that particular layer, but there are a lot of students who get enrolled to these institutions who are not in the top 1 level category of institutions. Now, how do we manage to help these students in better learning processes? I think there comes adaptive learning as a solution which will help measure the individual learner's journey and progress. And again, there comes a new breed of specialists whom the educational institutions will have to involve with. It could be behavioral analytics, people who are very good in analytics, content delivery, and assessments, so that the entire later life success and the current learner's journey can be mapped effectively. And apart from these 4 points, there are about another 5 points on my mind, which I would quickly like to share with all of you, keeping in mind how tomorrow's education space would look like. Again, going back to the developing nations, underdeveloped nations, this point has always been my point of concern. Learning has always been focusing on students with better grades, students who can crack entrance exams. But I'm also thinking about students who are from the vulnerable background, from the marginalized section. They could be migrants, there could be people who are from the war-hit zone, there can be first-generation learners. From my own experience, every day I deal with children who are the first-generation learners, who are not from an affluent class, they are from the low-income groups, and they are purely children with absolutely no career background at home. Now, such students formulate a major chunk of the student community across the globe, not just in India. I think keeping this in mind, educational institutions of tomorrow at least have to start thinking on the lines of inclusive learning solutions. And that can be implemented only when you start rethinking and reinventing your thought process and start following grassroots innovation as a basis of understanding, identifying the problem, and having an action plan. There are also students in India, especially, where I find children who are differently abled. I've been continuously working in assisting the visually challenged children and the disabled children as to how they can come to the mainstream and become inclusive. And in everyday reports, we see that the number of children in this background with learning disabilities or differently abled are on an increase. And I think the institutions of the future will definitely have to focus on these people and make an education system very much inclusive. And all this apart from the policy making perspective and the role of the top level management comes the very important role of the educator or the facilitator in the universities, the colleges and schools. Until and unless the educators and facilitators are given an opportunity to understand and create awareness among them that there is a huge difference between learning science and technology. Unless as a teacher, if I don't understand what exactly is learning science all about and what exactly technology can do to help me integrate these two, I think I would turn out to be a bad teacher in my class. So I cannot use the same talk and talk anymore, nor I can have a stereotypical digital platform anymore. If I'm focusing on a face-to-face, a blended learning mechanism, the educators have to be trained. Again, I re-emphasize there are a major chunk of faculty, major chunk of teachers who absolutely are in need of being trained. So there has to be a complete revamp of the teacher training programs, wherein we can also bring in digital learning specialists who will help them integrate. And then I would like to move on to something very important. I do not personally consider only the provost, the vice chancellor, or the head of the institution to be just the leader. I think every stakeholder, be it a faculty, be it an administrative staff, each and every one of them are a leader in their institution. Unless I have the onus of having this kind of sense of belongingness, I don't think leadership would have a complete meaning. And here I feel the educators, heads of institution, managements should first and foremost focus on building inner leadership. We should be able to guide ourselves in the right direction. We will be able to do that only when I know myself. So there is always a huge gap between me and myself where I do not understand, and this mastery of oneself is very, very critical. And how I do that is up to the institutions, their personal beliefs and mental models. It could be through practice of Aikido or yoga, mindfulness or Tai Chi, or it could be Qigong, whatever is the practice that you believe in. It does not matter you are an atheist or you believe, you don't believe, whatever is the kind of practice that I personally believe has to happen with inner leadership. I think that would help institutions progress in the right direction, which will help the future generations. The last 2 points that I wanted to share with all of you is about rethinking the balance between the minds and the machines. Over the last 5 decades, I noticed that there are a lot of innovations happening, but we have to keep in mind these innovations need to happen with human values in mind. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it just drops down to how exactly we are all socially living together in a society as a community helping each other. So there is a strong need to rethink about this balance. We need to teach the younger generation, the future generation, how to collaborate and keeping in mind the human values, which is known as collective intelligence. And finally, the last point, which I personally believe in, and some of you might think I'm being too idealistic, but I still have a very strong positivity towards this concept. So there is a Sanskrit word in India which is called bhavaikhyata. In translation in English, it means universal citizenship behavior. Generally, people talk about being a citizen of a country bounded by the geographical location. I've never believed in it. I never believed that we belong to a particular geographical location because I feel we are all connected through Mother Nature, irrespective of the location where we are located in. So I feel the most important skill that the future generation should know is to make humans really human. So we need to create humane leaders for the future. And how do we do that and why do we do that? And once we raise this human consciousness, this will definitely help the younger generation to navigate through complexity, tolerate the uncertainty and ambiguity that is just thrown at them. They will become socially intelligent, and this will ultimately lead to creating an environment wherein they will create positive, conducive environment for themselves as well as the others and allow others also to grow. And I believe we need to create the younger generation with the concept of universal citizenship behavior. On a concluding note, I would like to leave all of you with a small message, which I personally feel makes a lot of meaning and can change and transform our lives. Together, we all have the power to learn from nature. And we have learned a lot of things because of the pandemic, COVID-19. Create things of beauty and live a life of purpose. We all have the power to change our world. And I strongly believe that through wonderful platforms like this, all of us can collectively work together and strive in making education a wonderful space, making the difference to the lives of millions of children across the world. Thank you so much for your time.
Wow, thank you.